Welcome back to the Bryan Devore Connection. I'm your host, Bryan Devore. Home care companies play a pivotal role when it comes to taking care of our senior population in San Diego County. There are many things to look for when choosing a home care company. We're going to talk about sort of the 3 red flags when it comes to choosing it. And I couldn't think of anyone better to address this than my friend Dan Sweiger, owner of BrightstarCare of Carlsbad. Dan, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. I'm so glad you came. We've been talking about doing this for a while, and I think it's important to get this information out. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into the home care business.
Sure. Glad to, Brian. I had a 30-year career as a corporate executive, and I got to the point where I felt like it was kind of taking a little piece of my soul every day, and money isn't everything. So decided to make a huge career shift, and my wife and I decided to start a business together, and we wanted to do something where we felt like we were positively contributing to the world on a daily basis. So we were getting something more than money out of it. And we found BrightStar Care and home care, and obviously there's a large and growing senior population that needs support, and we decided to start the business. And 3 years now, actually in about a week, it'll be our 3-year anniversary.
Wow.
And yeah, that's us.
I remember when I met you, and I can't believe it's been 3 years already. Wow.
I know it's blown by.
That has flown by. So you talked about seniors who need home care. Typically, when is it that they need to bring in home care?
It can be a variety of things. In general, it's when you start having trouble with normal activities of daily living. Now, a lot of things can trigger it, right? You can have knee surgery and you can't get around. Someone's got to help you get dressed, make meals, whatever. It could be an illness. It could be dementia. It really boils down to, though, do you need a little extra help? And are you safer and healthier with some support at home versus, moving into, say, a senior community with assisted living services? And you don't always have to hire an agency, per se, right? There are millions of family caregivers out there. It tends to kind of take a toll on people over a while. I mean, it's a hard work being a caregiver for someone. So I would say, assess your situation. Is someone, are they a fall risk? The number one risk factor for seniors is falls. It can be life-changing. Are they eating right? Are they taking their meds right? You kind of assess those situations. And then you ask yourself, what do they need for support and who can provide it? And that might be a family member, a neighbor, it might be, other things, but there might be gaps or there might not be somebody that lives close enough by. So, and that's where you should consider an agency to come in and fill those gaps when you can't be the one that can be there.
Well, and to your point, so many times the family takes on the responsibility because they think they have to, either because of financial or because they feel it's their obligation to. Mom raised me, I need to take care of mom. What people often don't realize is there's a bigger toll in some cases on the caregiver than there is on the senior themselves. So they really need to bring someone in.
Yeah, well, and I think a big part of what we're really doing for people is we're taking some of that maintenance work off of the family so that they can be their family and not their maintenance person, right? So if you're spending all of your time cleaning mom up and helping her get dressed and just you're putting all that work in, when there's a little bit of a break, you need a break. So when is it your time for you to be their son or their daughter? And I think it's important, as you get later on into life, you only have so much time left. And so, let home care deal with the maintenance stuff so you can focus on quality time with what you got left.
Got it. How does someone begin the process? If they're deciding, okay, we need to bring in home care. How do they even begin the process of finding the right one?
And that's the most common thing with home care is it's not something you think about until it's immediate.
Yeah. Most
people call me and they're like, oh my God, Dad had a fall. Somebody told me I need to get home care. I don't know what I need. Help me out. And so I think conversations like this are really useful. Home care is not a complicated process, but it helps to understand how it works. So it's really simple. Like I said before, you kind of assess, okay, we think we have a need. We can't cover it all ourselves. We need to get some help in here. Okay. Number one, do your research. There are a lot of home care companies out there. And sadly, even in California, it doesn't take a whole lot to get a home care license. So there are some really great ones out there, there's some decent ones, and there's some real fly-by-nights out there. So, you want to do your homework, you want to get referrals, to talk to your doctor, talk to, professionals you trust, your religious leader, whoever, your neighbors. Odds are somebody that's probably had experience with a home care company. So you want to do that, but I also highly recommend you don't just call one company. I highly recommend you pick up the phone and call several. Each of us does things a little bit differently. We have different approaches. We're better at some things versus others, and it's not just a matter of A, you want to make sure you get somebody that's legit, that's good at what they do, and B, everybody's a different style. You want to find somebody whose style fits with who you are too.
That makes
so
sense.
that next step is you make a bunch of calls and ask questions. The next thing that would happen is you'd boil it down to one or two, maybe, and then we would come out and do an in-home assessment. And that should be free. If anybody says they want to charge you for it, just hang up, call somebody else. There's plenty of people that don't charge for that, and they shouldn't. Usually it takes an hour or so, and that's a two-way conversation. It's a chance for us to assess the situation, to make sure that we have the right people for the job and that we can prep them the right way so that they come in, kind of knowing what to do. And it's also there to answer the family's questions, help them figure things out. So up until that point, there's no pressure on you to make any decision, right? You're just gathering information. After that point, hopefully you're at a point where, okay, you can make a decision. And the decision might be, we'll wait for a while. It might be, I'm ready to go, let's get something scheduled. But when you're ready to make that decision, you pick your agency. The next thing, the first question an agency is going to ask at that point is, what's the schedule? Right? So I tell a lot of people that our schedule is like a 50-sided Rubik's Cube that never stops spinning. So for us to engage, we need to boil it down to exactly when do you want us to be there and what flexibility we have. We want you 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, but it's okay if it's 8 to 4, or we understand those things. So that way we can go into our Rubik's Cube and we can start to figure out who we can slide where to fit that specific target we're looking for.
Wow, it sounds like Major League Baseball trying to figure out the baseball schedule. It's kind of crazy.
We'll make a blockbuster trade.
Yeah, right, exactly, right. All right, so someone has a situation where mom has fallen, they need to bring in home care, they've done the research, they've talked to maybe 3 different agencies that they got referrals for, and now it's time to figure out what the red flags are. What are the things they should be keeping their radar up about when they're asking questions for the home care companies? The first one you and I kind of talked about was vague pricing. Talk about vague pricing.
Sure. And let me just say, ask lots of questions, but ask the follow-up questions. This is an important point. So, are you licensed? Yes. But what kind of license? From which body? Do you are you selective with your caregivers? Yeah, of course we are. Well, what do you mean? Tell me about that process. How do you vet them, right? So follow up, because every salesperson that you talk to is going to have those right answers. I do a lot of public speaking actually about this because with a few targeted questions, you can usually figure out the real ones from the pretenders. So vague pricing. Now again, there's a wide range. So there are a lot of good people that don't play games, and there's some that do play games. The ones that play games you'll say, well, how much does it cost? And they'll say, well, it depends. It depends on level of care. It depends on day of the week. It depends on, they'll give you, and the more vague that sounds, the more your radar should go up. Frankly, what the pretenders are doing is they want to get to that in-home visit before they give you a price because they want to see how nice your stuff is. They want to see how much they can get away with charging, and they're buying time to get information. So so that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to tease out who the pretenders are. And here's the tip. It's really easy. If they give you the it depends and there's a range or there's a whatever, great. Email me your price list. If this is a legit, we have, companion care costs different than personal care, costs whatever, that should be documented, right?
Right.
So if just watch the reaction. If it's let me see if I can, you've got your answer.
That's a huge red flag.
You've got your answer.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so good. So that's very important, I think, because people don't want to overspend. They don't want to spend what they shouldn't, and they want to make sure they're getting what they're spending their money on too.
And actually, just side topic.
Yeah.
You know, home care, it's not cheap. I mean, nothing's cheap these days. But you know, it is an investment. But home care also can save you money. So you know, a lot of times it can cost less to bring those assisted living services home through home care than to move into a facility. But also, preventing hospitalizations can save you a lot of out-of-pocket money. We actually did research on BrightStar data recently, nationally, versus having a different home care company or no home care company at all. We reduced hospitalizations by 25%.
Wow.
And on average, if I'm trying to remember the number, it was like $19,000 of out-of-pocket costs we save in a year on average.
Wow.
And people don't think about that. Like I said earlier, number one risk is fall. Preventing that fall can save you hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right.
But it's hard because it's, you know, well, when do you make that, you know, when do you get involved? And most people, they regret waiting just one day too long.
Right, right. And that's the problem, and we've talked about this many times, is, you know, people would rather put their head in the sands that something's not needed, and then they're reacting, you know, to a crisis versus doing preventative maintenance. So.
And oh, by the way, with home care, it's not like it's all or nothing, right? You don't have to start with 24/7 care or whatever. You know, if it's good to maybe try it for a couple of days. You know, part of what home care does too is it puts eyes and ears in the home for you if you're not right there. So we can, you know, can be evaluated. We can be letting you know. You know, we can be saying, hey, what do you think of this? You know, so the value of home care, that the reason we lower those hospitalization rates is because we've got those eyes and ears on. Now, BrightStar's a little different. We actually have a registered nurse that's our director of nursing who trains and oversees our caregivers. So it's not just the caregiver providing the service. That caregiver has a lifeline to a nurse 24/7. So they can call and say, I noticed they have a sore that's looking a little red here. Should I be worried about that? And the nurse can say, all right, we're going to get some ointment. You're going to get something on that before it gets infected, before it turns septic, before it, you know, that kind of thing.
Okay.
So I think it's important to look at home care also as an investment.
Yeah.
And that's hard because all you really see is the expense side, right?
But you don't look at the preventative side.
Yeah.
So you were talking about the, you know, caregivers and nursing and so forth. The second red flag that we talked about is vetting the caregivers and how the company does vet their caregivers. So talk about that.
So the standard vetting techniques, right? You do a background check, you do a drug screen, et cetera. Those things can be done in a way that you want to find things, or in a way that you want to say you did it, but you don't really want to find things. So it's not just do you do those things, but you need to ask the follow-up questions. So ask the specifics of their background check. How many years back? Is it national? Does it check their driving record? You know, like I said, BrightStar uses the maximum. We use the same thing the FBI does when they are vetting their new employees. You know, it's fingerprint, live scan, the whole 9 yards. Same thing with drug tests. So you can do a drug test that literally tests for one drug or 15 or anything in between, actually. And a lot of companies, if they want to say, you know, oh, they'll just test for one drug. And you know, if you test for 15, you find a lot of things that surprise you sometimes in people. We actually had a nurse apply, and she had morphine in her system.
Wow.
Now, she didn't have a prescription for it. They don't write prescriptions for morphine. And so really makes you question where she got it. And two, morphine comes out of your system very quickly. So she had to have taken that morphine that morning right before she came over. So, you know, if we were only testing for one drug, she was a perfectly normal looking person. And, you know, the one thing about home care, it's, you know, we send people into vulnerable people's homes.
Right.
And I take that incredibly seriously. I mean, we vet. If there's even a hint that we don't think we can trust somebody, we don't take the chance.
Right.
And I think that's incredibly important. So that's why I think it's important to ask those follow-up questions about your vetting and also the training and onboarding. And yes, of course, we train for how many hours, what topics, who does the training. I said, for us, it's a registered nurse. I mean, I think you can't really get much better than that. But is it just, the secretary in the office doing it? Like, are they qualified to do these things? Are they just checking the boxes?
Yeah.
So again, it's just ask those follow-up questions and try to get that read on, does this seem legit, or do they seem to be just kind of trying to tell me what I need to hear?
Right. Yeah, you got to kind of listen for the cues, and then when it comes time to signing the contract, the third red flag that we kind of talked about was the fine print in the contract.
Yes, indeed. And again, wide variety of companies out there, wide variety of approaches. So make sure you're asking for things like, am I committed for any specific amount of hours or weeks or whatever here? You want to look at, again, the pricing. Are there variations in the pricing? Are there automatic increases in pricing built in somewhere? There's all kinds of different things out there. So there's a company that they have a state grant that allows them to do the first 100 hours of home care very, very inexpensively. Now 100 hours, it's a couple of weeks, but they don't talk about that. They only talk about the cheap price.
Right.
Now, if you look deep down into the contract somewhere, it says initial price is only for the first 100 hours and will increase, without notification. Now, I got onto this because I get calls from people who said, "Oh my God, I went to this place and they told me this price, and 2 weeks later it tripled."
Wow.
And they didn't tell me. I got the bill, and all of a sudden my cost was triple. So it's just, and some of those stipulations are not, there's nothing bad about them. Some of them do charge more for weekends because it's harder to get people to work on weekends, especially with labor the way it is these days. Some of them will charge a different rate for different length shifts because, again, there's a lot of work out there for caregivers, so it's harder to get people to take shorter shifts. It's just make sure you've asked those questions, that you understand exactly what everything says. They will always have a client agreement, or they should. And I know nobody likes reading contracts and agreements, but I think it's important that you read every word of it. And when I do it, I actually read it to my clients and ask them, step by step, do you have any questions about this? Make sure you understand cancellation policy. That's another good one, right? When can if my needs change and I need to cancel a shift or change a shift, when can I do that without penalty?
Right.
So there's a lot of little things like that in there.
A lot of things to look for, lots of red flags, but we're talking about our loved ones, and so we have to be sure we do our due diligence.
Mm-hmm.
Dan, this has been so educational, I think, that for our audience to learn about home care, learn about you and BrightStar, and the red flags to look for. If you want to contact Dan, his information is on the screen, phone number, email, web address, etc. So you can get a hold of him, learn more about his company and how they do things. Ask him the questions that he said that you should ask a home care company as you're vetting them. Dan, thank you very much.
Thank you. If you don't mind, I'd like to add one last thing.
Yeah.
I actually tell this to just about everybody who calls. I try to tell it to everybody. My wife and I got into this business to help people. It's not all about money. So even if I don't do business with you, if you call me, I will do everything I can to help you. I'm like consider me your phone a friend. Because look, healthcare and senior care is complicated, and you don't know what you don't know, and sometimes you just need that person to tell you there is a person that actually does that thing you're looking for, and I can connect you with them.
Right.
So people can call me, and if I'm in a position to help with information or resources, I always will.
Well, and to your point, I've always known you to be someone like that. I've seen that in action. You've actually, you've put your money where your mouth is. I've seen you talk to clients and, talking to me and other people and saying, well, I couldn't help this person, but I got them to X, Y, Z, and they were able to do what they needed to do. So you've always been a great resource, and I appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me, Brian.